Welcome,
Thank you,
everybody.
Phil.
Our sixth and final fall forum with Tidely. We may do some more later after the Modern Church Leader Conference. We haven't decided, but I'm excited to be here with a friend. Julia, we've known each other online for probably 5 or 6 years, but I really got to know you when you recommended that I read your autobiography. And that's really what got me drawn into your story. But I'm excited to be with you here today because you are the classic story of someone who was anti AI, and now you're leading a company as the president of an AI content company. So tell us a little bit about that journey. How did you make that switch?
Yes. Well, I'm a business builder, really good at like generating revenue, serving clients well. And I come from 10 years of owning a writing agency that I grew to about 100 people. And so in that journey, I found out what worked and also what didn't work when it came to content. And it takes a lot to create content that people are going to consume, read, enjoy. It's the approach that I found most people doing was completely wrong backwards, where, there was no strategy. If you create a strategy for a piece of content, you will hit your mark 99% of the time, but most people don't. They're just like, oh, let me just create something and hope it ranks at the top of Google. The hope is not a strategy. So, soapbox aside, in those 10 years, I got very critical of what makes content work because I knew what made that clock tick. And so when AI came along, I was like, I don't know about this. It's really just word syntax generated by a machine. And there's no like thought and creativity put into it. So that's what I saw missing was like, okay, machines aren't going to be creative. Well, GPT got better and better. And in 2018, when I was looking at article spinners, I was like, I just don't know about AI at all. But then in 2020, when I saw what was happening in generative pre-trained transformers, that's GPT, I was like, okay, there's something serious brewing here. Like this technology is actually exponentially increasing. And it's increasing in a way where it's not, I don't believe the future of this is going to be crappy output. I think it's actually going to get better. So I took a gamble. And I am a huge risk taker. I'll take risks when people are like, what are you doing? You're absolutely crazy. But that's just what I do. I trust my gut. I trust God. And so in 2021, I sold my writing agency when it was doing the best it had ever done. It was just insane, like the cash we were pulling in, the team that we had amazing people. So I sold it when it was going up, which is when you're supposed to sell. And it was very hard for the next 2 months after I sold my agency. This was in fall of 2021. I thought I'd done the wrong thing. I was like, I just let a cash cow go. What was I thinking? And I felt like, Jack and the Beanstalk, whenever he tries to escape with that golden goose and it's like pumping out golden eggs, like that is the ultimate picture of what you want your business to do. And I'm like, I just let the golden goose go. So anyway, 2022 rolls around. And of course, that fall, the world's fastest adaptive technology comes out, ChatGPT. For the first time in the history of the world, humanity can interact with AI as if it's a human conversation. And so that changed everything. Natural language processing and just the ability to chat with artificial intelligence really began to bring people close to this technology. And that was ChatGPT. That was GPT-3. So we quickly went from 3 to 4. Now we've got 4.0. Now we've got O1 with reasoning, and all that happened in just like under 5 years. It's insane the growth that we've had because of the compute capabilities now with NVIDIA's chips being able to support like the infrastructure of how AI works. And we're just going to see that get better and better with supercomputers and quantum possibly in the future, nuclear and fusion. So we need energy, we need compute, and AI will just get better and better. Like it is a smooth exponential growth. So in 2023, in January, I had been known as the anti-AI writer for most of 2022, even when ChatGPT came out, because I was this critical writer that knew what it took to create successful content. And I was like, when you copy and paste from ChatGPT, like there's not even real-time research being done. It's just detecting and predicting. It's just generating word syntax. And this whole idea that was kind of getting widespread was like anyone could become an expert writer, but I knew better. I had sold millions of dollars worth of content. And so I was like, guys, don't use ChatGPT for writing. So I was like the only one on stages and places saying that. It was a little absurd, but it was funny. So in January 2023, I'm both a realist and an optimist and somebody that takes advantage of opportunity. So in January 2023, I landed on the AI tool stack that I knew was going to replace me. Like, I was looking at a series of at least 40 different steps, completely automated. And so when I saw that, I was like, somebody took my entire writing process, boiled it down to a series of steps, and then they automated all those steps. So that was, at the time, that was Consonant Scale, which is now, as Brandwell. We rebranded. So I jumped on board. I emailed the founder who I didn't know. And I was like, hey, I think you built my replacement. Can I work for you? And thankfully he said yes. And the rest has been history. Our founder, Justin McGill, is just a force of nature. It's amazing to work with somebody that has such a vision for where a product can go. And I think you don't see that in a lot of AI founders, especially coming from, the VC realm. We're a completely non-funded company, bootstrapped, coming from the actual customers, paying us real money. And I love that. It's a great way to run a business. So it's been an amazing journey going from completely anti-AI to working in the company set to replace me.
All right. So you used a word that I want to use to transition into the church world. You used the word exponential. And then when we think of Jesus' ministry, he multiplied fish and loaves and enough to feed 5,000. He talked about us being fruitful, 10, 40, 100-fold. You've claimed that these tools can help us be 25 times more effective, fruitful in the work that we do in the church. Talk to us about that. How is that possible?
Yeah. So I think that marketing itself is going to change forever. I used to run large teams. I used to structure them for pretty massive traffic campaigns that were all organic. So if you wanted 1 million visitors a month to your site, you'd hire Julia and her team to do the content for it, because it really came down to content. But that was such a hard process. It took headhunting, it took training, whoever you decided to hire, because oftentimes they didn't come in knowing how to structure content and how to put together an amazing piece of content that would rank in the top of Google. So you had to train for that. So all of those steps and all of that process of headhunting, training, refining, editing that content would take, oh my gosh, sometimes weeks and sometimes months, depending on what you were writing about, because it depended on the human. So especially like in church topics, it can take a while to actually find a writer that knows enough about the Bible or is even interested in these topics to then go and write content for websites. And that content has to be factual. It has to be well researched. You've got to have links to your sources, all this stuff. So if we can automate that, then we can truly 25x our production. And that's the magic of all of this. So that's what I'm seeing, not just one industry specific, but across so many case studies, whether it's like an agency reselling to their clients, or whether it's a church that needs a great website or that needs traffic to their website. Because what's amazing is AI is non-biased in the true sense of what AI should be. Now there's tools with built-in bias. That's a whole nother problem. But if you're using the right tool that's built for the right purpose, it is an unbiased machine. And so tapping into that can often give you better output than a biased human, which is insane. But that is where I see just an exponential opportunity, because we can finally, for the first time in history, we can come into our marketing departments and we can go, oh my gosh, I don't need 50 writers. I can just run a machine, produce the content, have somebody preview that content before it goes out. You got to proofread it. We have this acronym called TAP, where you take a look, you add anything that's missing, and then you publish. So that keeps it very simple. And you really don't need to overcomplicate it, because AI is handling the heavy work. And that's really what Brandwell in particular was built to do. A lot of AI tools, they can't even come close, because you have to, the amount of prompting to mimic Brandwell's baseline level of output takes hours and hours. So it's really all about matching up the right tool if you want to see that 25x increase.
Awesome. Hey, I wanted to just make a quick comment. Julia is walking right now because she's part of a step challenge and she has to meet her goal. So multitasking is accepted in this context. Thank you for.
I'm glad you pointed that out so we know why I'm moving.
Yeah, I should have said it up front, but anyway, I figured those who've been watching this long will probably want to know what's going on here. All right, so
No, it's your turn. You gotta walk.
I love some of what you just said there. And if I'm in a church, one of the concerns that I have is how do I make sure that AI retains the heart? Like what you just said is it can get factual, probably the facts faster than humans can get it and help me research that. But how do I make sure what's written has the heart and the feel of the people in this church? Like it should match who we are as a body. How do we make sure that happens?
Yes. Well, I think that it's a fallacy to think that AI itself has a heart and even consciousness.
Right.
So that's where, we can really get this wrong where it's like, okay, I don't need to do any work. I don't need to show up. I don't need to engage with my community. I don't need to facilitate goodwill, build a rapport, and love on my people. Like if you're thinking that's completely wrong, that is the polar opposite of what AI should do for you, which is take the menial work out of your work so you can actually get back to loving your people and putting the heart into your work. So what that looks like is with our websites, we have several, we do lots of brand well content for our own sites. I'm always setting the compass. What does this content look like? What is it that we should be talking about? What's our CTA in this content? What's the call to action? And then how are we representing our own voice? And so if you're always setting that compass and you're like, okay, these are some tried and true phrases we want to say to our people. These are some key pieces that we want to refer them back to. This is an example of like the tone of voice we want to have. So if you're always setting that, you're putting what AI doesn't have into your AI-driven production. And that is so important because if you don't have a human steering this, it can sound really shallow, hollow. When the Toys R Us came out, Toys R Us ad that was 100% created by OpenAI's Sora, the comments on X were, this killed the company a third time because it came across so inauthentic. And that was a problem because the whole story of the video ad was this authentic story that was so heartfelt. So they paired up this message with 100% AI generated video content. And, they're kind of behind the curve, almost gone bankrupt. And so they were trying to adapt and be one of the first to adapt. So I see where they were going, but it just entirely missed the mark because you can't expect AI out of the box to have that heartfelt presence a human would have. So I think expectation there is key.
Gotcha. So what you're saying is there's some key questions that we need to answer when we're giving instructions to AI to produce a form of content. Are these also things that we can train it to do and know every time? Like, hey, these are the instructions every time for doing a newsletter, or this is how we want to do a sermon recap. This is how we do Bible study materials, et cetera. Can you train it in those kind of ways? And if so, what are some steps that are key that churches need to think about?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great point to hit on because I think that automation should be something you can do across all the content you produce. So if you can set a rule once and AI follows that rule and you get better content, why not? I mean, that's amazing. So with ChatGPT, we've got memories now. And then in Claude, we've got artifacts. So even in these LLMs, we have ways to kind of pull up the history of what we want these LLMs to produce. Now, that's not really, to me, that's not a broad parameter enough to address a brand voice. So that's where, again, full service platforms like Brandwell, you can actually set a tone of voice at a project level, which means you can set up an entire website and then create a custom tone of voice for that website, save it, and it only goes to that website. And it's training over time on all the content produced. So It gets better and better. So you can set this. So you can set something that builds on itself, that almost makes your brand voice get better over time. And that's like the magic of this to me. I think it's whenever you're building content campaigns, you want to hit high traffic numbers. It's hard to grow that team and then have consistency in your brand voice. Because again, your wild card is a human and no human is the same. So getting these humans to all sound like you, I think is a lot harder than training AI to sound like you.
Mm. All right. So now I'm going to put on the communications director manager hat, and I'm listening to you saying, hey, we can shrink a department of 50 down to 1 with AI. And I'm concerned now about what's my role. If AI can do, 80, 90% of what I do, does the church really need me? So what's the role of humans? How does that play in? Let's talk about jobs in this context in the church.
Yes. Yeah, it's crazy because it's like, I think the stats they're kind of all over the place right now, but it's like at least 80 million jobs are going away because of automation. And then the other stat is 90 million new jobs are coming out. So you actually have a 10 million surplus. So I think, the worst thing you could ever do is think, oh no, AI is going to replace me, and then kind of freeze. Because what that does is that puts you in a place where you're extremely susceptible. It's the humans that are not using AI that will be replaced by the humans that are. All right. So if you realize that really, I think, opens up your mind to the possibilities. Like for me, when I sold my writing agency and then I adapted to AI, I'm actually doing the best work I've ever done. I'm working with better people than I've ever worked with. I get to go to conferences and meet people like Phil in person. Like running my writing agency, I wouldn't have the time to do that because I was so slammed with the minutia of managing 100 people. I don't ever want to go back there. So I love the days of automation because it frees me up to, host meetups and go spend time with people, which is like where I actually do my best work. So if you think of it like, okay, I could be replaced by this. Yeah, you could if you're not using it. The best thing you could do is start using it. Learn how to, Phil, you and I were talking and you, I believe, co-wrote a song with ChatGPT. Like that's such a great use of this technology. Like, how do I take my creative abilities, what God gave me as a talent and a gift, how do I exponentially increase it by using AI to help facilitate the production? I mean, that you think like that will change your life. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I've gone on numerous walks and taken ChatGPT with me and said, hey, I want you to talk to me about this. And it has sped up my thinking process, but not only sped it up, it's brought a lot of ideas to me that I wouldn't have thought of in, let's say it took me an hour on that walk. It probably would have taken me 10 hours to produce the same content, and my results would have probably been half as good. It just really amplified, and then it took and clarified things. Now, when writing that song, it just gave me the nugget of what I wanted the song to be. I'm not willing to let AI write a song for me. I know there are people who do it, but I'm a purist. What I used it for was to get some ideas and some words that I was having some lock issues in my brain. So I appreciate that. But yeah, you're right. I think if you don't use it, you are going to get replaced. If you use it, there's opportunity. If you're in a small to medium-sized church, which that's the majority of Tithely customers, so those who are listening to this probably are in that place, budget's a big deal. So how do we think about budget when it comes to AI? I know it frees up a lot of resource, as you're talking about, but there's some investment required to get the right tool stack, as you called it, in place. So how should churches think about that investment?
Yes. So I think look at your goals, first of all, and be very focused on those goals. So if your goal is, okay, we don't have enough people coming in the door on Sunday, then how do you achieve that? How do you spread the word? So for me, a website first approach, you never lose. If you invest in your website and you build that traffic, that is an investment that pays back. So let's say you have a website, you've had an established, or maybe it's a brand new church brand, and you've got that at least done. So you're in a great place to start building content on that website that brings traffic. And you could follow tutorials and use ChatGPT and get that blog output, it's going to probably take you just as much time to actually put together blogs that will rank than it would for you to go hire a human writer, pay them. Like, it's the same amount of time, which is not, for me, like, that's not really a win. Like, oh, I got to sit here and prompt this tool. So even though it's $25 a month, very cheap, if you match it to the goal, which is traffic to my website, leads, people that would come to church on Sunday, then you're going to spend a ton of time sitting there prompting ChatGPT. So that's not ideal, especially for, what you just mentioned, Phil, the smaller business or smaller church that doesn't have like a lot of faculty, a lot of extra time. So that's where, I strongly recommend matching up the AI platform to the goal you're doing. So if you want to do more YouTube video content, if you want to take, let's say, a sermon, cut it up, create shorts from that for more visibility. One of my favorite tools for that is Opus. Opus Clips takes this long piece of content, video content, breaks it up and just spits out amazing shorts that you barely have to edit. So like one click, AI tool gives you your output. And our tool, Brandwell, it just got significantly cheaper, where I believe you get 25 posts for $249 a month. So if you compare that to the cost of a writer, a writer to write 25 long form posts, well, that's exponentially more. So investing in a platform that is like literally you drop in a keyword that you want to rank for. Let's say it's a location-based keyword to pull in people to come to church on Sunday. So that's what you would want to write content on for your site. You can drop that keyword in 5 minutes get a blog that's 100% original, ready to rank, gonna bring in traffic. I mean, that's amazing without any editing. So it's all about the right tool and matching that up to the goals that you have, because that's when you really save time.
That's excellent feedback. So Opus Clips right here. That is their site, opus.pro, and then brandwell.ai. And while I'm showing links, I might as well just take a quick moment to say, if you're watching this and you're not signed up to see Julia at the Modern Church Leader Conference, you should, and it's still possible to go. I know it's less than 2 weeks away, but we would love to see you there. Just follow that link, and you can literally name your own price. Now, if you're seeing this later, that may not be possible, but we would love to see you there. I'll be there. My session is going to be done post-conference because we wanted to reduce the number of conferences at the site, so everybody gets access to mine. People have to choose yours. They can watch the recording after yours as well. So that'll be fun. All right, so enough talking about that. By the way, those who are still watching, Julia is doing a step challenge. I think she's up to about 2,000 steps by now in this conversation. I don't know. Next question for you. So beyond the numbers, how can AI help churches craft message that resonate with their community? So beyond the clicks and shares, creating genuine connection, are there some ways that you recommend people craft AI to help make that connection in their community? So once they're off the website, now they're in the pew or they're in the chairs or whatever, what do we do?
Yeah. So crafting the message for that community once they're there.
Once they're there, part of the community. Yep.
Yeah, that's a great place to go. Yeah, I think that if you don't have a newsletter set up and an email list, I would strongly recommend that. An email list, website and an email list to me are like the two pillars of how to get online traffic and then retain that traffic you get so far. So if you don't have a newsletter set up, it could be really simple, where you have on your website, like, just drop in your email to get a weekly email drop in your email address to get a weekly update from us. But then curating a newsletter and thinking of like personal messages. So what I would do for this in particular, if you do have a Brandwell subscription, we have unlimited AI agents I've helped build. One of them is an email writer. So you can literally drop in and say, I want to talk about this sermon the pastor gave on Sunday with this one point in particular in this verse. So you feed it that, and then it'll write a whole newsletter based on that you could send out. But you always want to, when you're writing an email in particular, you want to be very careful that email does not sound robotic, because that will especially people that are faith-based, like that will really turn them off. They don't want to hear that. So you just really want to make sure with your email content in particular that, if somebody's not handwriting it, which if it's a short email and you feel like, okay, you know what, I want to write this myself. That's not a bad thing. And listen, I work full-time in AI. I can't believe I'm saying that. But we go to an amazing church here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And every Saturday I get an email from the pastor that's so encouraging, so uplifting. And I know that Rowdy wrote that because I know him. And it's so personal, and it's so like, sometimes it's like discombobulated, but that's how he talks, and it's funny and it's good. So it can be hard, I think, sometimes to get that personal message across in email, especially in a faith-based environment where, the heart needs to be front and center in your work. So that's where I think, once you get people in thinking about how do you show them the heart of the church, how do you do that in content, you really couldn't ask any better question. Because when you do that, oh my goodness, like those emails, I so look forward to them. I'm like, what's Rowdy going to send on Saturday? And I'll be there at church on Sunday because that email is so good. I'm like hyped for what's coming. But again, if you are using AI to speed that up, like let's say you hate writing, maybe the pastor hates writing, whoever is creating this newsletter, and it should come from church leadership. Let's say they hate writing. Well, that's where AI is perfect because it makes somebody that's not a writer a decent writer. And to me, that's magic. Instead of like, okay, we have to go hire a writer. Does this writer even care about my brand? Do they like the topics that I'm going to pay them to write about? Well, then you can eliminate all of those concerns and just go straight to the actual machine and have it spit out good content. So I think relying on AI to help with that process is really good. Just be very careful of over-reliance.
It seems to me getting AI to transcribe and recap sermons and split it into different applications, like here's some suggested discussion questions, here's a recap you can put into YouTube when you want to get it to rank for search. Like that's one of the best ones, I think, because no one wants to write that, and AI can in a heartbeat. Exactly. I think the message from Rowdy or your pastor, oftentimes that's coming from the Lord, and let's don't let AI get in the way of that. Right.
That's very true.
But if it's something we've already produced and we can like repurpose it, then AI is a great way to do that, it seems to me.
Yes, exactly. So if it's already like spoken, put out there, inspired, that's where you can use AI to distribute and get so much more reach, which is like where, video, shorts. I mean, if you give me a one-click button, I'm always going to click it to produce that content and make it go so much further.
Yeah, I love that. All right. So this actually came straight from AI. I've got to say it because I think it's hilarious. AI is evolving faster than a praise band set list on Sunday morning. Literally, that's the question that came out. But what is a trend that you see on the horizon that churches should be concerned about?
You said concerned about?
Or watching. Yeah, just watching paying attention to, being ready for however you want to think about it, positive or negative. You're an optimist, so probably on the positive side.
Right. Well, it's interesting because I think like, sometimes the reason people need church is not because they're happy. It's because they're, in a dark place. And so I think like what churches should really be aware of in the coming days is going to be, we're rapidly accelerating. I've heard it said, I think Yuval Harris said this, we are organic beings with this inorganic matter, which is an almost alien version of artificial intelligence, simply because it's something not that it dropped down from Mars, but that it's so far beyond our understanding that it's going to be hard for us to even comprehend what's in that machine at some point. So we're rapidly accelerating, and we're still organic beings. Like that hasn't changed. Like we still have flesh and blood, we have heart, soul, and that won't change. We can definitely add some like robotic arms, and there's a whole theory there about what we're going to be able to do. But regardless, we are still human beings. And what's coming at us is a technology that I think some of us probably aren't prepared for. and there's going to be, massive job displacement. I think there's going to be a lot of hopelessness because people just don't know how to adapt. If you're in a system for a long period of time and you've kind of thought a certain way for a long period of time, like the rate of acceleration at what's coming is going to really rock that stable world you had. And so I think, like we're not going to know how to handle, let's say entertainment becomes VR and we're in the metaverse. Well, how do we make sure that we're not addicted to something that is going to be very unhealthy? Because we need fresh air. We need sunshine. We were beings created for that. We need personal interaction. And so if we're, wearing a headset all day and immersed in something we think is better than fresh air, that's going to create some serious depression because that is not what we were built for. And so I think like churches should be aware that there's going to be some humans that don't adapt well to this at all. And they really need hope. And they really need a message of, life can be better. And so I think like, the more we can just share hope and optimism from the church itself for the people that come in and they are not optimists and they are pessimists and they are depressed and they're not handling this well, then that's like, I think the best direction the church could kind of prepare for. So not to say the future is really dark, but there's going to be some instability in how we handle these sudden paradigm shifts. And it's going to affect a lot of people, not in a positive way.
It seems there's a couple shifts that you've kind of hit on there. One is the displacement. You talked earlier that there's actually going to be a net gain of employment through this, but it's always unsettling when people have invested and got degrees and spent years and decades in a certain career path. And all of a sudden that has been replaced by technology. And we see that that's part of especially the capitalist economy, but that's just part of the world that's taking place. So pastors, especially, we need to be able to pastor people through that and help people find those opportunities. Just speak for a second. What are some of the 90 million jobs that you said are going to be created because of AI? What are some of those that you see coming out that people can be aware of and maybe specifically thinking about in the church?
Yes. Well, that is where I get really excited because I think that there's a whole economical shift we're going to see. It may not land for several generations because to change an economy takes decades, sometimes centuries. So we may not see this land till our children's grandchildren, but we're going to need to be prepared because I think we'll see shifts before then. So the prediction is by 2029, artificial intelligence will become AGI, which means that it will have this general level of intelligence where it can interact with the world much like a human and replace most of human work. And so when we get there, we're going to see just massive shifts. And I think that governments might actually figure out a way to, I don't know if the government will, I think it will be technological leaders supporting what the government does, which is really interesting to see. If you follow Elon Musk at all, it's interesting to see his thoughts on this. But, we're going to need to take the dividends from the profits of automation and figure out how to get it to the people and not let it live in like 5 corporations, because that's not healthy for the world. So I think we're going to see like a whole, it could be like some kind of UBI, some kind of currency that actually gets established from this, which may sound like a sci-fi movie, but with what's coming, I think we're going to actually need some of this. So it's just crazy what's coming in the days ahead. But I think that we're actually going to get to do more of what we love. So there's this idea painted by some economists that I really agree with, and it's called the meaning economy. And what it is this idea of a post-labor environment where much of work is automated. So like you don't need to be a producer, you don't need to be a cashier, but you can be any of those things if you want to, because there's still a need for human to human interaction. So if we think about that, if humans are actually picking work based on the fact that I need human interaction today, that's number one. Number two, what do I actually love to do? Then we actually get a much healthier workforce than the one we have now, which kind of came from the second and third industrial revolution, where we had factories, we had this idea kind of instilled in us that our value is based only on our productivity, which is a lie. It comes innately. So I think that what's coming in the meaning economy could be far healthier for the human than like this hustle culture that we've been trained on for, decades now. So I think that thinking of what you love to do is probably the most important question you could ask yourself and your kids as well. Like, what did they love to do? What's their passion? Even if it's like not going to make them a multimillionaire, like that won't matter in the coming days, because I think work will change and we will see people choosing jobs based on what they love to do, because the economy itself may change. So that's a little bit crazy. Those are my speculations based on a lot of research.
All right. Well, that's definitely a horizon we need to be paying attention to, especially as church leaders, as we look to the future. And that's definitely what a modern church leader needs to be aware of. And then what's the implication for those who are in the church who embrace that and those who are struggling? You already talked about that. I don't want to linger in that any longer. I want to shift gears and have a little bit of fun with you. I want to hear about some AI bloopers. What are your favorite AI bloopers, especially if you've seen one happen in the church? I'd love to hear some examples. And if you're watching right now and you've got one, throw it in the comments, because we'd love to share those also. But Julia, what are your AI bloopers that you just crack you up when you remember them?
Oh my goodness. I'd have to say, I think it was Pixabay, something. I think it's Pixabay. Recently launched this video generation tool where you can take like our video going on right now. You could literally like add a hand in this video tool, scrunch our faces down, and then the video AI begins to melt our faces.
Oh my.
Like, that is just ridiculous. There's no need for a tool like that, but that is funny.
Yes, that is hilarious.
That's my current favorite. I'll have to send you so you can actually see it. It's so ridiculous.
I was preparing a set of slides recently and was trying to get AI to paint a picture of a barbecue picnic happening in the presence of Lake Tahoe. And it kept generating these images where most of the tables looked like real people were sitting at them, but in the middle, there's like this tiny sliver of a table. Most of the picnic tables are normal, but the one in the middle is like these two people are sitting with their legs intertwined with each other in this 1 foot picnic table. And I kept trying to tell it how to fix it, and it would fix that one, but it moved it somewhere else. It's like, okay, I'm giving up. We're just gonna do something different here. All right.
My gosh.
Do you have another one? Especially, have you seen anything in the church where someone has tried something with AI and it just didn't go the way they expected it to?
Yeah, let's see. I have a friend who actually posts a Bible verse every day, and then he throws that Bible verse into Midjourney. And I've been surprised how good the images are. Like, I've been waiting for like, streams in the desert, and then you get like something really strange, like a desert, and then like a water drop, and then like a giant head, or or a hand, and then there's 7 fingers. But I haven't seen any of that. It's been really interesting to see like a great translation in a visual image from Midjourney of that verse. So I haven't come across. I mean, I'm sure it's happened where it's just like, what? This is not at all what I wanted, because that happens with especially image generation.
Yeah, image generation. And I feel like it's gotten a lot better. Obviously,
yes.
In 23, there were a lot of 6-finger hands and all those kinds of things that were coming out, but I feel like it's getting better and better. Well, let's flip the script and let's talk about some churches who are doing it well. Are there any churches that you've seen that are doing particularly innovative things with AI that we can all learn from?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've seen video production in particular take a sermon and just spread it out to the masses really well. Like, I've seen Instagram reels generated, whether it was Opus or Descript. Descript has an amazing AI edit feature now where it's like a full-blown producer editing that whole reel. So it looks amazing. So that's a new feature inside that tool. But yeah, I think just like taking a piece of content and distributing it really far I've seen that done really well by churches where it's like, wait a minute, you only had one person doing that. Like, I can't tell. It looks like you had a whole production team. So in that fashion, taking something that was like an hour, 2 hours long, and then just distributing it is a really great, I think, approach, especially for churches.
All right. So this is an ethical question. Maybe it's ethical, maybe it's just practical, but there's always this question, just because we can, should we? So
yes.
Where does that factor in when we think about churches? So yes, we could go produce 100 pieces of content from one sermon, but should we? So how do you put your strategic mind around that, where you think about what should we do, what shouldn't we do, just because we now can do all these things?
Yes. Well, I'm a big believer, because I've seen it work, where if you have good content, like the old quote from the book, if you build it, they will come. But that's only true if that content is really good. And so what most people get wrong is the underlying content that they're going to structure, thousands of fragments from. That underlying piece of content is complete garbage. And so it's just like, 30 reels scheduled over the next month. They're not going to contain anything good because the baseline was terrible content. So I think what a church has that's very unique, if that church has an incredible pastor, and many do, where the words coming out are inspired, then, oh my word, you have a foundation to build from that is going to be nothing but great. So if you have that, you have these incredible hour-long inspired messages, then, like, to me, there's no better content on the planet than content that comes inspired from God. And so you see that in a Sunday sermon. Like, that's the format. So if you take that approach and you're like, okay, is this fundamental hour-long piece of content good? Then it's like, go crazy with the amount of content you can repurpose from that. And instead of like let's say you could do 100 reels. Well, instead of that, I would just do a few really good reels that highlight the content, and then think about, how do we distribute this one message across multiple platforms? So if you don't have audio, if you're not live streaming, if you're not YouTubing, if you're not on Spotify, if you're not doing the Instagram reels, do all of that, because AI is going to make that so much easier. You can even, and Brandwell, a feature that I love for this is you can drop a YouTube video in and instantly get multiple blogs from that video. So you can create SEO content also at the click of a button from long form video content. So if the baseline's good, then it's just, okay, how do we add AI to this and just exponentially grow the reach? That's how to approach it.
Yeah. So I think the principle there is garbage in, garbage out.
Yes,
good
precisely.
And good content out. So focus on having good fundamental content. And it seems to me AI can actually help in that process. So let's just talk about your pastor, Rowdy. I don't know if he does this, but a lot of pastors will have research assistants who will help them go find examples and, hey, can you go find an illustration for me about this or whatever, so they can kind of get ahead. Well, AI would be a great research assistant in helping a pastor amplify their time and find maybe even better examples. I'm also thinking about this. So AI can help us listen to the needs of our congregants, not just customers, but congregants. And so I know there's some GPTs out there that help you define your avatar, but I'm wondering if there's some ways that we could use AI to listen to what our community is saying, whether it's on social or whether it's online, to pick up on, hey, there's a lot of people talking about depression or overwhelm or sadness or, anxiety over the hurricane that's coming right now or whatever it might be. Could we use AI to help us listen to the needs of our broader community so that we can be adapting our content to those things?
Yeah, I think that one's a little tricky, because it depends on, where the feedback from your audience comes in. So if it's congregants, that's going to be likely like Facebook Live comments if they can't make it in the door, or people after the church service actually coming up to the pastor saying something. So that kind of feedback, unless like we had a all-knowing, all-listening AI, which I hope we have some governance there. We don't want that.
Right.
It's going to be hard to just deploy an AI bot, for example, and do that. But that said, we've got several levels to hit before we achieve this autonomous AI where we will be able to deploy more. So we just hit level 2, which is reasoning inside ChatGPT now. That means it thinks, there's a chain of thought. And then level 3 next year is agentic behavior. So we can actually deploy agents to complete tasks. So I think like in an agent world, we will be able to do things like, okay, go poll my email list, and it will go and actually create that poll for you. But till then, I think like the best way you can get feedback is to actually like send out polls. Like, what is it you're struggling with? Like, have people just click and answer. And there's a lot of tools you can use that make that very simple. Sometimes they're like innately built in your email marketing software. But that's like, very simplistic. But then I would take those answers and try to run them through ChatGPT or Claude, whichever LM you're using, and have it summarize and give you the key points. But getting that feedback is still like very much a human process in a church setting, because a lot of people, they're going to handwrite, they're going to verbally tell the pastor what they're struggling with. So just having your eyes and ears open and then sending out a poll to really capitalize on the audience you do have that's online, and then summarizing from there with an LLM, that's a really powerful approach.
How about beyond the walls of the church? Because I know a lot of what we're trying to do with SEO is target needs in our communities. So
yes,
we're trying to get people to come into the church or find ways to go reach them where they are. Can we listen to things that are being said in the community with AI?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I know that, I just keep thinking of the scenarios that we're in right now. And I think I would wait till agents are out to really deploy stuff. That said, you can set up like automated software that will take in their feedback and allow them to like drop in a video, record, and then it goes straight to you with a transcript. So I think testimonial.io, that's a great way to just like send out a link that then asks them to send a video back, and then it does a whole transcription based on that. But they still feel like, hey, I recorded a video for you. Like, it still feels very human.
Yeah.
So it's going to be hard to do that across platforms, though.
Yeah. I think this is going to take some time to figure out. But there's got to be some ways eventually that we can do this. So.
Yes.
Cool. Well, last question. When you're looking ahead, I know we've talked a little bit about where you think AI is going long term, but let's think about in terms of the church and our mission of advancing the kingdom of God. What are some ways that you think, what gets you excited when you think about what AI is going to enable us to do in reaching more people and see more lives changed?
Yeah. I think, we have such an opportunity for impact, because we don't need to do what I used to do for people, which was hire large teams of people to execute marketing. So if we have this opportunity we've never had before to actually spread the word on the internet and on, the most visited platform in the world, which is the internet, then I think it really opens up possibilities. Because, if you think of like Jesus' days, there was no internet. It was him going out, which is, I think sometimes we've lost that. So we need to like go back there, but we can also exponentially increase our reach online, which is the most powerful vehicle today. And then that frees us up to go do more of what Jesus did, which was the in-person interactions that meant so much. So, I just see the opportunity as something that's incredible, because when you can 25x your production, when you can, let's say, publish 50 blogs in a month, and you didn't have to hire a single human writer, and all those blogs have the potential to rank you at the top of Google, like that is such an opportunity. That is incredible. And you can do it at a fraction of the cost, because AI, just cost so much less than what a human would for that type of work. So that to me is the opportunity, is like, how do we automate our reach and the effectiveness of that reach, and look at it like, okay, I'm going to take 1 or 2 amazing people on the ministry staff, give them the right tools, and exponentially increase their capabilities. I mean, that is the way to think.
That's amazing. I love it. Julia, how many steps have you hit during the last 50 minutes?
Oh, let's see. I got to see if I'm winning the step challenge. That is a great question. I saw my comrades walk by me. Oh, only 5,000? I thought it was like 10 grand. That's not a lot.
Hey, you're not walking super fast, so that's actually pretty good.
That's true. I need to not sound like I'm hyperventilating.
Exactly. No, I'm glad we were able to at least let you keep on going. So you guys can follow Julia's work at Brandwell at that website, and we would love to see you at the Modern Church Leader Conference in Dallas. That's October 21 through 23. Julia will be speaking. I will be there. We've got a lot of great sessions and content designed just for pastors and communications directors and administrative people, and AI is going to be the topic of at least 2 or 3 of the sessions. I know we talked a few weeks ago with Dustin Stout. He's going to be there on a panel talking about it. So it's going to be an important conversation that modern church leaders need to grapple with. So Julia, thank you for being part of this conversation today. Can't wait to see you in a couple of weeks. And
yes,
folks, thank you for hanging out with us.
Thank you for having me, Phil. This was awesome.
All right. Bye, everybody.